Kaimi stood frozen by the stream, her breath ragged, as her brother's terrified scream echoed in her ears. She had tried to protect her family, to save her father, but now everything was unraveling. Rotomai's small figure disappeared into the darkened woods, and Kaimi's heart sank deeper than ever before. She had no idea what to do. The night had always been her silent witness, but now, the trees themselves seemed to press in on her, suffocating, accusing. The snake, Ira, had vanished back into the shadows, leaving her alone with her guilt. She wanted to run after Rotomai, to explain everything, but what could she say? How could she justify the terrible things she had done, the deal she had struck? Kaimi collapsed to her knees, her hands clutching at the earth beneath her, and sobbed. She had sold herself to a monster, all for her father's life. But now, it wasn't just her father's health at risk, it was everything. If Rotomai told their mother or anyone in the village, they would never understand. She would be an outcast, shunned, maybe even worse. And Ira, what would the snake do if it discovered that its secret was in danger? The next morning, the air was thick with tension. Kaimi had barely slept, her mind consumed with fear of what her brother might say. She tried to go about her usual tasks, but her hands shook as she helped her mother in the kitchen. Her father, still recovering, sat outside in the sun, breathing deeply, his skin no longer burning with fever. Rotomai, her mother called, "Come help with the firewood." Kaimi tensed. Her brother had been avoiding her since the night before, and she knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. He appeared from behind the house, his eyes darting nervously to Kaimi before looking away. She swallowed hard, trying to meet his gaze, but he refused to look at her. She wanted to say something, to beg him not to tell, but the words stuck in her throat. As the day wore on, Rotomai remained quiet, and Kaimi's anxiety grew. She couldn't bear it anymore. That night, as the village slept, she slipped into his small room. The moonlight filtered through the window, casting shadows across his sleeping form. She knelt by his bed, gently shaking his shoulder. "Rotomai," she whispered. "Wake up." He stirred, blinking up at her with wide, fearful eyes. "Sister. I don't want to talk about it," he mumbled, trying to turn away. "Please," Kaimi begged, her voice breaking. "I need you to understand. What you saw. I didn't want to do it. I only did it to save father. Please don't tell anyone." Rotomai sat up, his small body trembling. "But why, Kaimi? Why did you let that thing, that snake, do that to you?" Kaimi's heart ached. How could she explain the weight of the decision she had made? The desperation she had felt when her father's life was slipping away, when there had seemed to be no other choice. "I did it because I had no other way," she said softly. "I was scared, Rotomai. I didn't want to lose father. I thought it was the only way to save him." Rotomai's lip quivered. "But it's wrong, sister. You can't keep doing this." Kaimi nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I know. I don't want to keep doing it. But Ira, the snake, it won't let me stop. If I stop, father will get sick again." There was a long, painful silence. Rotomai's face was pale, and he looked as if he didn't know whether to run or cry. "I won't tell anyone," he finally whispered, his voice small and scared. "But you have to find a way to make it stop, Kaimi. You can't live like this." Kaimi nodded, though inside, she had no idea how she would ever escape the grip of the snake. The next evening, Kaimi returned to the stream, her heart heavy with dread. She had to go back to Ira. As much as it tore her apart, she had no choice. Her father's life still hung in the balance, and she couldn't risk him falling ill again. When she arrived, Ira was waiting, its cold eyes glinting in the moonlight. "You are late," the snake hissed, its voice filled with displeasure. Kaimi swallowed hard. "I want to end this," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't want your money anymore. My father is well now. I've paid my price." Ira slithered closer, its movement slow and deliberate. "We had a deal," it whispered, its voice like a cold wind. "And you are bound to me now." If you break your promise, your father's health will crumble. You don't want that, do you? Kaimi's heart raced. She had known this was coming, but hearing the words out loud made her feel as though a heavy weight was crushing her chest. But there must be another way, she pleaded. Something else I can do. I can't keep. Ira's eyes narrowed. You will do as you are told, it hissed. Or your family will suffer. The snake coiled around her ankles, its cold body wrapping tighter and tighter, sending shivers down her spine. Kaimi's hands trembled as she clenched her fist. I will find a way to break this, she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she believed her own words. The snake laughed, a low, sinister sound. You think you can break the bond between us? Foolish girl. You have no idea what forces you are dealing with. Kaimi's heart pounded in her chest as Ira slithered back into the darkness. She had no choice but to obey, for now. But as she walked back to her village, she made a silent vow to herself. She would find a way to end this nightmare. Somehow, she would break free from the snake's grip. Over the next few days, Kaimi couldn't stop thinking about what Ira had said. She knew she couldn't continue like this, but she didn't know how to escape. The snake seemed to hold all the power, and she was just a pawn in its twisted game. But then, one evening, as she was walking through the market, she overheard an old woman speaking to a group of villagers. The woman's voice was low and raspy, and her eyes glinted with a strange, otherworldly light. There are ancient ways, the old woman said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Ways to break even the darkest of curses. Kaimi's heart leaped in her chest. Could this woman know how to free her from Ira's grip? Without thinking, she approached the old woman. Please, she said, her voice trembling. I need your help. I've made a terrible deal, and I don't know how to escape. The old woman's eyes flicked up to meet Kaimi's, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, the woman nodded slowly. Come with me, child, she said. There is much you need to learn. From that moment, Kaimi's life took a new turn. She was no longer just a victim of Ira's control, she was determined to find a way to fight back. With the old woman's guidance, she began to learn about the ancient rituals and secrets that could break the bonds of dark magic. The old woman led Kaimi into a small hut on the edge of the village, a place that most villagers avoided. It was said to be a home of dark spirits, a place of shadows and whispers. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and old smoke. Strange symbols were painted on the walls, and in the center of the room sat a large, blackened cauldron. The old woman, who introduced herself as Nana, began to speak in a low, rhythmic voice, her words filled with ancient power. Breaking a bond with a spirit like Ira is no easy task, Nana said, her eyes never leaving Kaimi's. The snake has wrapped itself around your soul, and it will fight to keep you. But there are ways if you are strong enough. Kaimi's hands trembled as she listened. She had never dealt with magic before, not like this. But she knew she had to try. There was no other way. What do I have to do? Kaimi asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nana smiled, though there was no warmth in it. You must go deep into the forest, to the place where the veil between this world and the next is thin. There, you will find the spirit of the river. She can help you. But beware, child, for the journey is dangerous, and the price for her help may be higher than you expect. Kaimi nodded, her heart pounding. She would do whatever it took to free herself from Ira's control. But fear gnawed at the edges of her mind. What if the price was too high? What if she couldn't pay it? That night, Kaimi prepared for the journey. She packed a small bag with food and water, and as she left her home, she felt a tightness in her chest. Her family was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger she was walking into. Rotomai, her little brother, had kept his word and said nothing, but Kaimi knew that even his silence wouldn't save her if she failed tonight. The village was quiet as she moved through the narrow paths. The moon hung low in the sky, its pale light guiding her toward the edge of the forest. Her feet moved quickly, but her mind was clouded with worry. What would the river spirit demand from her? What would happen if she couldn't break free from Ira? The deeper she went into the forest, the more the air seemed to change. It was thicker, heavier, almost suffocating. The sounds of insects and night birds grew louder, surrounding her like a living, breathing thing. The shadows between the trees seemed to stretch out, reaching for her, and the further she walked, the more she felt as though the forest itself was watching her. Nana's words echoed in her mind, the place where the veil is thin. Kaimi didn't know what that meant exactly, but she had a feeling she would recognize it when she found it. After what felt like hours of walking, Kaimi saw it, a small clearing at the heart of the forest. The air was still here, too still. The trees that bordered the clearing were ancient, their twisted trunks and gnarled branches reaching up toward the sky as if they were trying to claw their way out of the earth. In the center of the clearing was a pool of water, dark and still, like a mirror reflecting the night sky. Kaimi hesitated at the edge of the clearing, her heart pounding in her chest. Was this the place? There was something strange about it, something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. As she approached the pool, a soft voice echoed from the darkness. "You seek the river spirit," the voice said, smooth and cold like water running over stones. Kaimi stopped, her heart racing. "Yes," she whispered. "I need help." The water in the pool began to ripple, and slowly, a figure emerged. The spirit was tall and graceful, her body made of shimmering water, her hair flowing like a waterfall. Her eyes were pale and glowing, and when she spoke, her voice was like the sound of the river itself. "You have made a bargain with a creature of the earth," the spirit said, her eyes locking onto Kaimi's. "You are bound to the snake, Ira." Kaimi nodded, tears filling her eyes. "Please. I didn't know what I was getting into. I only wanted to save my father. But now I can't escape." The river spirit circled around Kaimi, her watery form gliding effortlessly over the ground. "The snake's hold on you is deep," the spirit murmured. "He has woven his power into your very soul. To break free would require a great sacrifice." Kaimi's heart clenched. What kind of sacrifice? The spirit's eyes darkened, and the water around her began to swirl. "You must give up what you hold most dear." Kaimi froze. What did she hold most dear? Her family. Her father's life. Rotemai. The thought of losing any of them was unbearable. But if she didn't find a way to free herself, wouldn't they be at risk anyway? She was trapped, and every choice seemed worse than the last. I can't," Kaimi whispered. "There has to be another way." The spirit's gaze softened, but her voice remained steady. "There is always a price, child. Magic is not given freely, and neither are the choices we make. If you wish to be free from the snake, you must give something in return. If not your family, then perhaps your voice." Kaimi blinked in confusion. "My voice?" The river spirit nodded. "The song you sang for Ira, that is where his power over you began. Your voice carries the weight of your sorrow, your pain. Give up your voice, and the bond will be broken." Kaimi's mind raced. Her voice. She had always loved singing, even before all of this. It was how she expressed her emotions, how she connected with the world around her. But could she really live without it? Was the price worth it? The spirit watched her closely, her glowing eyes full of patience. "The choice is yours, child. But choose wisely, for once the bond is broken, it cannot be remade." Kaimi stood at the edge of the pool, her heart heavy with indecision. She had already sacrificed so much for her family, for her father. Was her voice too high a price to pay for their safety? She thought of Rotemai, of the fear in his eyes when he had seen her with the snake. She thought of her father, struggling to breathe, and of her mother, worn down by worry. They had all suffered so much, and it was because of her deal with Ira. If she didn't break free now, the suffering would only continue. Kaimi closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "I do it," she said quietly. "I give up my voice." The river spirit nodded, her form shimmering with approval. "Very well, child. Step into the water, and the bond will be broken." Kaimi hesitated for only a moment before stepping forward. As her feet touched the surface of the pool, the water rippled beneath her, cool and soothing. She waded in deeper until she was standing in the center of the pool, the water up to her waist. The river spirit circled her once more, her watery form glowing brighter as she began to chant in a language Kaimi couldn't understand. The water around Kaimi began to swirl, faster and faster, until it felt as though the entire pool was spinning. The river spirit's voice grew louder, and suddenly, Kaimi felt a sharp pain in her throat. She gasped, but no sound came out. Her hands flew to her neck, but it was too late. The bond had been broken. Her voice was gone. The river spirit's form slowly faded, her glowing eyes the last thing to disappear. "It is done," she whispered, her voice echoing through the clearing. "You are free." Kaimi stood in the center of the pool, the water now still around her. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. Her voice was truly gone. The realization hit her like a wave, and tears filled her eyes. But mixed with the sorrow was a sense of relief. She was free. The snake could no longer control her. As Kaimi made her way back to the village, the weight of her decision settled heavily on her shoulders. She had paid a high price, but she had done it for her family. She would never be able to sing again, never be able to express herself in the way she once had. But they were safe, and that was all that mattered. When she reached her home, the first rays of sunlight were breaking over the horizon. Her mother was already awake, preparing for the day. Kaimi smiled at her, but said nothing. She couldn't. Her mother frowned in confusion. "Kaimi. What's wrong?" her mother asked. Kaimi shook her head, tears filling her eyes as she gestured to her throat. Her mother's face paled. "Your voice. What happened?" Kaimi could only shake her head again, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she could never explain. But as she looked at her mother, and then at her father, who was sitting outside, breathing easily for the first time in months, she knew that it had been worth it. Rotumai came running out of the house, his face bright with excitement. "Sister. You're back. Did you do it? Are you free?" Kaimi smiled at him, nodding as tears streamed down her cheeks. Rotumai frowned. "Why are you crying?" Kaimi pointed to her throat again, and realization dawned on Rotumai's face. "Your voice. You gave up your voice." Kaimi nodded, and Rotumai's eyes filled with tears. He rushed forward, wrapping his arms around her tightly. "I'm sorry, sister," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Kaimi hugged him back, her heart full of both sorrow and love. She had made her choice, and now she would have to live with it. But as she held her brother close, she knew that she had done the right thing.